I was asked by Carcanet to write a little essay to go with this new book of poems of mine, Veii and Other Poems. I'll read the essay now, and then I'll read a couple of poems from the book. The essay is entitled A Homeric Convention. It feels strange to be asked to speak about my poems or about myself in relation to them. Surely the thing should be the other way round. They should speak for themselves and incidentally for me. I come to them as a reader might for what they can tell me. Outside them, I feel somewhat at a loss. Where to begin? What to say? How much? How little? And in what order? The openness of a poem is surrounded for me by a large distrust both of myself and others. But there is a hope too. I was struck by a remark of the poet John Birtwistle that he wrote his poems for unknown friends. That, for me, describes the hope perfectly. For guidance about what to say of myself, I think of what is given by way of information about the minor characters in classical epic, in the Iliad or the Aeneid, when they make their briefest of brief appearances, usually at moments fatal to themselves. We learn their name and something of their parentage. We learn above all where they came from, and in the form of an epithet or detail, something about the place. That is enough, the convention implies, to tell us what they are. For the rest, there is the poignancy of the unspoken, perhaps merely the inchoate. To follow the Homeric convention then, I was born and grew up in Oxford. The year of my birth, 1947, places me further as belonging to the generation whose parents met in the war because of the war, and who married and raised their families soon afterwards. Were it not for the war, I would not be here. My poems belong to the peace and possibility which the generation of our parents struggled for. The trauma belongs to legend, but a legend which may return upon us in unexpected ways. My father was a classical scholar, a specialist in the works of Horace and Lucretius, and in the recondite study of Latin prose rhythm. I am no scholar, but I grew up among scholars, and am moved by the romance of scholarship. Those Renaissance portraits which show a nameless young man with his finger in a book present a figure I feel for and identify with. However patchily and imperfectly, I belong, if only as a late-coming hanger-on, to a tradition of European humanism, based in the classics and in the landscapes associated with their study. A world which makes itself felt, not as previous to ours, but parallel to it. I emphasize that word European, a word anathematized in the prevailingly secessionist England of today, where I find myself in Haussmann's phrase, a stranger and afraid. The Argentinian poet Borges used to say, I heard him say it, that in such situations poetry might serve as an antidote. If my own poems carry some traces of such an antidote, I am glad. As for the epithet or detail to go with the place, Matthew Arnold's description of Oxford as home of lost causes and forsaken beliefs and unpopular names and impossible loyalties will do for me. The title of this new book of poems of mine, Veii, refers to a vanished Etruscan city, an early rival of Rome. Other poems in the book refer to ancient cities, to their foundation and destruction, or as dreamed locations of culture and courtesy. I suspect here some idealized apprehension of the city I grew up in, some sense, too, of a culture under siege, lost or in the process of being lost. The phrase, a collection of poems, has a specially literal meaning for me. I've always been a collector, first of fossils, then of coins and books. Similarly, by writing them, I have collected poems. A poem should have for me something of the properties of an object, the shape, the solidity, the identifiably separate existence. As in a coin, I look in the poem for an instance of concentrated design. Recent poems of mine have had their starting point in certain objects for which I feel an attachment, alarmingly like love. It is almost at times as if the object had written the poem for me. All I had to do was to let my attention be drawn in, intimately engaged, taking on its own volition as if by a kind of necromancy, the object leading to a memory associated with it, so that the poem consists of object and memory together. It frequently gets said that poetry is unparaphrasable. This truism falls on my ear as a kind of excuse or evasion. Poetry deals in matters that are often obscure. But by saying as clearly as possible what can be said, we narrow and limit and define what remains unsayable. I want the meaning of a poem to declare itself plainly. So I am for paraphrase, within the poem as well as outside it. There is often in paraphrase as much or more poetry as in the attempted poem itself. The poet of the generation above mine whom I most admire, Tom Gunn, is my exemplar in his insistence on a clear prose meaning. The Californian poet Alan Stevens wrote in a poem about Gunn and dedicated to him, "He simply set in words such meanings as were there." That principle would be my touchstone. To it, I would add a remark of Gunn himself in an essay on the poetry of Ben Jonson. All poetry, Gunn says there, is occasional. What counts is that a poem should be true to its occasion. Now a few recent poems. This poem is called Toward Kayseri. Kayseri is a town in the central Anatolian plateau in Turkey. Kayseri is derived from the ancient Roman name of the city, Caesarea. Toward Kayseri. Jolted from somnolence, I saw the mountain. It filled the bus window, hanging in air, immense and sudden, an anomalous wonder wholly out of scale with the threadbare patchwork of fields that lay beneath. Waking to it, before I had fully woken to myself, I gazed in disbelief. It seemed to float on vacancy, uncannily upheld. A scarf of unseen mist across its base, the slopes above hazed in sun-shot vapour, the summit silver-metalled with flashing snow, at once remote and overbearingly near as the eye reached to it. Then the bus turned. We came down to a city, so to the next stage of a journey, the last stage soon lost in the hurry of moving on. The journey also soon to be unremembered separately, one in a palimpsest of youthful journeys. Was that toward Kayseri? Still, after many years, the vision of the mountain kept returning. Where and when had I seen it? Had I seen it? My disbelieving wonder became a doubt. Surely it must have been a waking dream, perhaps some local feature, nondescript, seen unawares, distortingly magnified. Had the intimation of some larger land deluded me, the one that youth imagines on setting out and hopes despite itself to reach and know, an air-drawn shadow ideal haunting the actual journey? A cloud effect merely. The thing was too exceptional, could not be properly taken in. It bulked too large. And the memory remained adrift, nameless, too easily consigned by me to the unverifiable. I chanced looking through a sale catalogue one day on a photograph of Greco-Roman coins, provincial issues, a congeries of cities, of variant myth, nymph, hero, deity, of vanished law and cult. Among the lots, a group stood out, which showed on the reverse a little mountain. Always the same motif, crowding the field, a grandly present mass crowned sometimes by a statue or a star. Figured as if the die cutters themselves had lived beneath. Image and memory suddenly crossed, filled me with recognition. I checked the catalogue entry. Caesarea. Kayseri. It had indeed been on that road. Here was the mountain I had glimpsed and lost through my incuriousness so long before. Mons Argaius, placed at last and named. What I'd thought irrecoverable, reclaimed. And now 3 poems about ancient coins. Coins of 3 Greek cities, 2 of them in Italy and 1 in Sicily. The first is called Tarentum. I should say that the ancient city of Tarentum was built on an isthmus which encloses a large sea inlet. In these poems I link coins with memories or reflections of my own that they summon up. Tarentum. Riding side-saddle on a dolphin, or shown in the act of dismounting, Taras arrives to found a city. There, since no lodging was to be had, I walked out beyond the last houses and went to ground in open country, my sleep walled by a stiff clay furrow. Then back in the first of day and down to the foreshore of an inland sea, where fishermen returned were sorting their catch and tackle, long-curled, clear-eyed, insouciant, as in the coin's time. Now a poem, second poem, title is Arethusa. Arethusa is the nymph of the spring, the freshwater spring that rises just by the sea harbour of Syracuse. And the coins of Syracuse, the ancient coins, show her head often surrounded by dolphins. Your braided hair a stream of water, intact you hurry a hidden spring, past the circuit of plunging dolphins, to surface beside a distant shore. Where I stood once, a secretive boy with my parents, staring at a pool brackish with broken reeds, and failing to match it to the myth. Your image, purely archaic, stamped in silver, reaches across the years, the passage of a lived life, to set me back there. This time, to find no contradiction. And the third of these poems, A Coin of Metapontum. Metapontum, again, one of these cities between the heel and toe of Italy, a Greek city. The coins of Metapontum often show an image of the goddess Demeter, the goddess, that is, who represents, in Swinburne's phrase, the life of fruits and corn. A coin of Metapontum. You look out at me from the silver, the woman I am not equal to, your heavy hair mounded with harvest. Had I known myself better in youth, had I trusted myself more fully, I might have been your suitor. The years which have brought all that I could hope for have duly brought it late, too late now, though I hold your coin, to need to hope for you. But resting in your image, the understanding of what I missed gifts me with a kind of possession. This poem is titled Monte Gennaro Revisited. Monte Gennaro is one of a range of mountains to the east of Rome in central Italy. It's the mountain, though this doesn't come into the poem, that hangs over the villa of the Roman poet Horace, and I'm in a kind of competition with Horace in this poem, because I'm covertly saying that it was my landscape once as well as his. It's a poem of memory. I talk about myself in the third person because this is the person I once was. In the poem, the phrase "the campanile" comes. This is the name of a cliff escarpment in an outlying ridge of Monte Gennaro. It's the local name, the campanile. And the campanile is the part that hangs directly over Horace's villa. Monte Gennaro Revisited. If grove and glade are archaic words to him, the archaism belongs to early rising, the hour of sleep forgone, a shadow clinging to the active body, slowing thoughts and speech to the steep path in twilight, caught as he is drowsily in the wonder of his waking. Under the grey crest of the campanile, one with the others, step by step, he follows up to the hills, the wooded pasture, thinking and speaking no faster than he treads, ready for the day as daylight is, no readier. As gradually it comes, is all around equal and full and clear, but shadow-haunted as the young body is that matches morning. Scarcely to be known again, that first freshness, except as morning surprises him sometimes, bringing it back, or a reminiscence back. Where are the welcome, the response, the promise? The place remains. Is it a thought recovered, thin as it may be, shadow without body? He is at the spring, or in the bramble glade, or charcoal burner's abandoned grove, or treads impalpably some stretch of familiar path, or lingers to pull dew-chilled figs from the tree in the meadow by the road. Thirsty once more, the cattle numbered and watered, and the day almost over, his intimation tells him. the sun having just now reached the valley floor. And to finish, a little epigram. With lively step. With lively step or plodding resignation, I follow the track to the one destination. What else remains to do, or what more to say? Every man, young or old, is on his way.